It's the sense of amazement. I think we forget sometimes how bad Oscar bait can truly be, that we crash into it just so we can remember how bullshit awards really are. Do you remember that Stephen King directed movie in the 80s, Maximum Overdrive? It's about an alien fog that encompasses the Earth and makes every machine become alive and attack people. Crash is kind of like that, only it's an alien fog that encompasses all of LA and turns everyone racist. Nope, you didn't dream it. This movie actually won Best Picture. I remember when it came out, and it got this groundswell of grassroots support and critic appreciation. Thanks, Roger Ebert. And it just kept building and building, but none of us had any idea it would win. I mean, it was going up against Good Night and Good Luck, Capote with an amazing Philip Seymour Hoffman performance, Munich. I mean, Spielberg was back in a big way, and Brokeback Mountain, the clear favorite, a once in a lifetime masterpiece. And then Crash won. And for a split second, it seemed like all of Hollywood and the film community just collapsed. What the hell happened? Well, I'm flashing back 20 years to the larger awards landscape of 2005. The prestige movies, the important movies that got a lot of Oscar buzz, a lot of critical support, and either worked or didn't. And we're going to find out, is Crash the worst Best Picture of all time? Crash is one of those everything is connected movies. We had a few of them in the 90s. Robert Altman's Shortcuts, an LA movie, Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, another LA movie, and they became a big thing in the 2000s. Think Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu's Amores Perros, 21 Grams. We were clamoring for movies about connection and coincidence. Well, Crash takes that up to 11. It's hard to even describe the plot here because really it's about a bunch of disparate characters who keep bumping into and out of each other's lives, or crashing into their lives. Don Cheadle is a cop and he's trying to locate his ne'er-do-well brother. But there's another pair of cops, Matt Dillon and Ryan Phillippe. Dillon is the hardened one. Phillippe's the new rookie. And what do you know? Matt Dillon's a hardcore racist. They pull over this rich black couple, Terrence Howard and Tendiwe Newton. And Matt Dillon, to exert his power and dominance, well, he sexually gropes Tendiwe Newton, while Terrence Howard can only look on and watch. So Tendiwe Newton and Terrence Howard argue over it. She thinks he could have done something, but he thinks they would have been shot. And then there's Ludacris and Lorenz Tate, who are very cognizant of how black young men are viewed in society. But oop, the movie flips the script and they immediately carjack a white couple, played by Brendan Fraser and Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock is now terrified of any one minority. So she has the locks on her door changed. The locksmith is Michael Pena. She thinks he's a gangbanger. Michael Pena only wants to provide for his daughter, but he comes into conflict with Sean Taub, a Middle Eastern shop owner who thinks Michael Pena is ripping him off, so now he wants justice. Each character wants to do the right thing, but they're constantly forced into situations where they don't want to be racist, they just happen to be, because hey, everyone's different, everyone has their own biases, everyone is a walking contradiction. Did I mention this movie only takes place over 36 hours, and yet every character is racially bumping up against every other character, spouting epithets and biases and preconceived notions and false truths. They argue, they bicker, they break up, and at the end there's a tiny bit of reconciliation. But it's such a film of mixed messages, saying that racism is an internal thing. It's all about the individual. Never mind systems and infrastructures and economies and whole industries built on racism. We have to recognize how bad we are, and we all have to hug it out and get along. But that is not how the real world works. And 20 years later, the very foundation on which this film is based is so flimsy because we've been exposed to so many horrible systems caught on camera. We see it day after day that things like people just being shittily racist to each other, well, yeah, that sucks, but it's not the whole picture. And writer-director Paul Haggis misses the forest for the trees. This is such a 2005 movie, and that is the biggest indication, because it doesn't want to really reckon with the real problems of America. I mean, just take the Matt Dillon character. He's a shitty police officer, but we're also supposed to feel sympathy for him because he's caring for his ailing father. You see, he only gropes that black woman because he's frustrated. He doesn't know how to channel his anger for the insurance system anywhere else, so he sexually assaults her. But amazingly, the movie almost ignores that when later, Tandy Wayne Newton's character is in a car wreck and the car is about to explode. And who is the officer on the scene to save her? Why, it's Matt Dillon. Oh, isn't this an awkward situation? The woman is either gonna die or she's gonna be rescued by her assaulter. Now, that's not to say people can't be complex and complicated, but these are not complex and complicated characters. They're mouthpieces. Back then, we called it political correctness, and even that was a bad term for it. But today, we would call it woke. You know what word I'm talking about. Is the woke in the room with us right now? Truthfully, this is pure pandering, and it kind of foreshadowed the Obama era of post-racial society that liberals and neoliberals would tell us we were in, but everyone really knew we weren't. And that's the complicated legacy of this movie, a legacy that is compounded by all the other awards movies that were out at the same time. You see, this is 4 years after 9/11. Hollywood was finally trying to get itself back on track. It was trying to find its identity. That wasn't just in the culture of the time, that was in our movies. It was now time to reshape society into how we wanted it. And that meant our movies looked into corruption and injustice. George Clooney's second directorial effort, Good Night and Good Luck, followed Edward R. Murrow and the CBS News team as they bumped up against Senator Joe McCarthy during the McCarthy era of the 50s. It was taking back then to comment on the Bush administration of the 2000s. And likewise, the potboiler, The Constant Gardener, took on Big Pharma in a conspiracy thriller starring Ray Fiennes. While Crash was saying the onus was all on us, movies like those and Syriana, which took on the oil industry, were telling us it's also institutions. Syriana was about the complex web of the oil industry, the brokers, the CIA, the lawyers who do due diligence to let mergers happen, all about bureaucracy and corruption and this tangled web our US government got into with the fossil fuel companies. But Hollywood was also exploring violence in the aftermath of 9/11, and we got two exceptional movies, Munich and A History of Violence, that really wanted to reckon with that. Steven Spielberg's Munich, it's about Israelis going after the Palestinian terrorist group that killed Olympians at the Munich Olympics. In A History of Violence, it's about contemporary America and how there's always a level of violence and danger underneath. Even just this small collection of movies played better than Crash, simply because they were putting a lens under actual things that were going on in America. There was also a batch of prestige movies that dealt closer with identity. Where Crash chose to create thinly drawn characters, these movies tried to show the marginalized, those on the fringes, with richer, more complex lives. I've talked already about Brokeback Mountain and sung its praises, but it was the defining movie of that year of how it explored identity and how it really put masculinity under a microscope. Likewise, Capote, starring Philip Seymour Hoffman, took an actor we identified so much with certain types of masculine archetypes, and he totally transformed into Truman Capote, an effete and classy man about town. But it wasn't about his sexual identity. It explored his cravenness in digging into real-life murders to bolster his reputation as a writer. But there was also Trans America with Felicity Huffman. She was Oscar nominated for this, where she played a trans woman who goes on a road trip with her son. This is an actress playing a trans woman. And that was 15, 20 years before we even had discussions about trans identity in movies and trans actors. And then Terrence Howard from Crash showed up again in Hustle and Flow. It's a movie literally about a pimp who dreams of being a music star. The foreign language winner that year, Sozi, was about a South African kid who's in lowly circumstances who takes care of a baby. All these films ask us to look at people we usually associate stereotypically and see them in a new light, something that Crash didn't bother to explore at all. And there was also a slew of awards movies that looked to the past to comment on the present. Joe Wright's Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley and the adaptation of Memoirs of a Geisha swept us up with costumes and production design and romance to evaluate how women were treated back then and understand how much their station has evolved now or not evolved. Pride and Prejudice is the stronger of the two, but Memoirs of a Geisha was one of those strange ethnic movies back then that was directed by a white guy and performed in English. It was a way different time. And it wouldn't be Oscar bait without a few biopics. There was Jarhead, based on a Gulf War veteran's memoir, starring Jake Gyllenhaal. There was Walk the Line, with Joaquin Phoenix playing Johnny Cash. There was Cinderella Man, with Russell Crowe playing a real-life Depression-era boxer. These movies not only wanted us to reflect on what happened back then, but relate them to our own experiences now. And looking back, the most successful of these were the ones that had a subtler approach. Obviously, I share a lot of love for Brokeback Mountain, but I absolutely adore Capote and Munich. I like what Cronenberg does in History of Violence and what George Clooney does in Good Night and Good Luck. I have a strange affection for Syriana. I mean, who didn't stand up and sing along with Hustle and Flow? That was just a fun time. And a lot of the other movies are solidly entertaining, if not classics. But most of these movies carry richer stories and stronger directorial details than Crash does. Now, I'll give you this. There is a baseline of, let's say, comforting mediocrity to Crash. It's got a televisual pace and style Paul Haggis came from TV, but there's something strangely watchable about it. Each scene strains so hard to evoke real life and fails sometimes so spectacularly that it can't not be entertaining. And for the Academy Awards, it was kind of the most easy movie to embrace, when in actuality, it was the weakest of all those nominated. It all came down to, how did the Oscars want to award itself? Did they want to finally award a gay love story Best Picture? Or even a movie centering a gay man like Capote? Or a really dark and difficult movie like Munich? Crash happened to be the safest and most insane choice they could make. And while it's not a movie that hits me in my core where I can say I hate and loathe it, it's silly and preachy, but entertaining in the worst and best possible ways. Is it the worst Best Picture of all time? Not quite, but it's up there. Have you ever seen Out of Africa? That shit is just so boring. Oh my god. I'll watch Crash 10 times over that. Despite its good intentions, Crash was one of the weakest awards movies of 2005. So 20 years later, I give it a regrettable 2 out of 5 stars. If you like this review, please like and subscribe or follow me on Letterboxd at RamirezS316. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go crash into some good movies.